Have you ever wondered if you're psychic? That's the topic of today's reading as we answer that very question. Hi everybody, I'm Sue Allen Clayton. Welcome to my channel where we're learning how to read tarot one card at a time. In today's video, we'll be using a 3-card spread to figure out if someone is psychic. I will be using the Radiant Rider-Waite Tarot, and there is a link below. This 3-word question was posted anonymously online, and I was excited to do a reading about it. The question was, am I psychic? For simplicity's sake, I'll assume that the querent is a woman. She provided no other information, so I can't share anything else about her. The first thing I'd like to say is that I don't think the querent would be asking the question if she wasn't psychic. I have never asked myself if I should become an astronaut, or questioned my gender, or wondered if I should get a pet snake. When a question pops into mind, I take that to mean that it is at least worth considering, and probably quite significant. So intuitively, I feel like the querent is psychic because she's asking the question. Before we go any further, I just wanted to define what psychic means. It's not a one-size-fits-all definition. I like the definition from the Cambridge Dictionary. It says that psychic refers to a person who has a special mental ability, for example, being able to know what will happen in the future or what people are thinking. There are many flavors of being psychic, and I'm just going to touch on a few here. Some people equate being psychic with being intuitive, so they might have a gut feeling about someone or something that is going to happen. Then there are people who hear, see, feel, know, taste, or smell things that the rest of us do not. For instance, someone can smell cigar smoke and connect that with your dead grandfather. Or they have a vision of 2 baby boys behind you and know that you're pregnant with male twins. There are people, known as mediums, who connect with people who have passed away. There are people who can predict the future. And there are people who can hold objects, such as a wristwatch, and know things about the person who owned it. So asking if you're psychic can be a complicated question. It's a little like asking if someone can cook. Most people can boil water and make toast. Some people can bake, and others can cook fabulous pasta. Only a few people are Michelin star chefs, but they are all cooks. It's like that with being psychic. I believe that we all have some psychic abilities, but it is a continuum that depends on innate ability and also training. Nevertheless, we're going to take the question at face value and see what we can come up with. And that is the querent psychic? The querent pulled 4 cards. She used a body, mind, soul spread and also pulled a card from the bottom of the deck. Card number 1 is the body, and it looked at how the querent might be experiencing her psychic abilities in her physical body or related to her health or energy level. The querent drew the 4 of Wands reversed. Card number 2 is the mind and looks at how the querent might be experiencing her psychic abilities through her thoughts and emotions. The querent drew Justice. Card number 3 is the soul and looks at how the querent might be experiencing her psychic abilities through her inner self or connection with spirit. The querent drew the Moon. Card number 4 is from the bottom of the deck. The querent drew the Hierophant reversed. We'll talk a bit more about what the bottom of the deck means in a moment, but let's start with my first impressions. We have 3 major arcana cards, so I think this reading is a big deal to the querent. We see pillars in all 4 cards. The Hierophant and Justice have gray pillars. The 4 of Wands has wands that look like pillars, and the Moon has stone gates that look like pillars. We have a progression from a white background in the Hierophant to 2 cards with sunshine in the middle to moonlight on the right. All 4 cards show some kind of podium or stage. The Hierophant and Justice are on a dais, the 4 of Wands is on a stage, and the dog and the wolf in the Moon card are on a hill that looks like a stage. Now let's look at each card individually, starting with the Hierophant reversed. I don't usually read from the bottom of the deck, so I'll give a quick explanation of what that means. The bottom of the deck gives your reading more depth by looking at things that aren't visible in the other three cards. This includes underlying forces, subconscious factors, hidden influences, challenges, or obstacles. The bottom of the deck card can also provide additional advice or guidance. So let's see how the Hierophant can provide more information about the querent's question about her psychic ability. In the Hierophant, we see a male religious figure sitting on a stone throne between two great columns. His left hand is pointing upward and his right hand is holding a cross. He is based on the Pope in the Catholic Church and concerned with traditional religion and things like rules, rituals, doctrines, and moral codes. The Hierophant is about following the rules and not about discovering your own path to God. I'm sure this is relevant to the querent, and I can certainly relate. I grew up in a very religious Christian environment, and things like mediumship and fortune-telling were considered to be a form of devil worship. I did some research on psychic abilities, and it seems like the Catholic Church believes the same thing I was taught, and that's that psychic abilities do not come from God. My best friend read tarot cards, and it took me decades to be open to even having a reading because I was so fearful of conjuring the devil into my living room. As you can see, times have changed. It's interesting that my sister is a gifted medium. We're both in our 60s, and we kept our psychic studies and abilities a secret from each other and our family until a couple of years ago, as we didn't expect that my church-going parents would welcome the news. So how does this relate to the underlying issues about the querent? I'm guessing that she has a religious background that is not supportive of psychic abilities. So the querent may know that she has psychic abilities and be afraid of them, or she is interested in exploring her psychic abilities and very concerned that she will summon the devil, get ostracized from the church, or both. I can say from experience that this is a very hard barrier to cross when you've been taught that religion is about following the rules and not looking inward for answers. In the reverse position, we can see that the two disciples are above the religious figure. They are no longer kneeling before the Pope. They have found their own way. The Hierophant reverse tells us that the querent is on a new path. She is choosing to break away from the rules and traditions of formal religion and find her own way. Much like my sister and I did, she is embracing new ideas and looking inward for answers, which is not something that happens if you are satisfied with your current religion. Card number 1 is the body and looks at how the querent might be experiencing her psychic abilities in her physical body, her health, or her energy level. In the upright position, the Four of Wands is a card about celebrating in a community forum. In terms of psychic abilities, in an ideal world, I can see a querent's psychic gifts being supported, recognized, and celebrated in the community in a way that energized her body and improved her health. Minor Arcana cards that are 4s are very stable numbers. Think of a table that has 4 legs. Wands are about action, so the person is taking actions that are very supportive. We also see 2 people on stage, so the querent is not alone. Perhaps the other person is a mentor or someone that she can lean on. So what about the Four of Wands reversed? This is a person who doubts their ability, feels like they are on shaky ground, or doesn't feel like they have a lot of support. Since I've given up Christian fundamentalist beliefs, I met many people who have been psychically gifted since they were children. Some of them saw and talked to dead people. Others had visions or prophetic dreams. They were not things that were supported by their family, which is an understatement, and I wonder if the querent had similar psychic experiences in her youth. Now she is feeling alone and unsupported. Many people, including myself, experience their psychic abilities in their body. For me, it means feeling the other person's pain or emotions. This is extremely confusing if you don't know why it's happening. Why would you feel great one moment and then suddenly you have a stomach ache or feel overcome by anxiety or are dead tired? Unless you understand what is happening, it makes no sense. In my opinion, it's essential to have support as you develop your psychic abilities, however you want to define them. I've mentioned in other videos that I worked with somebody one-on-one for a year, and it was one of the best decisions I've ever made. I learned that I was a lot more intuitive than I realized, and it explains so many things about my experiences and my personality. Finding a mentor would be extremely helpful to the querent. The woman I worked with has a teenage son who shares the same gifts. He is so lucky to have a mentor in his mother, so he doesn't feel alone on his journey. The Four of Wands reversed tells us that the querent is experiencing some sort of psychic stuff in her body, but is also feeling very alone and unstable. I don't know if you guys can notice my voice is going hoarse. It's so interesting when I try and talk about this stuff. It's like my body does not want me to. And I've been drinking hot tea and I've been drinking this stuff, and it's just like, it just happened and it'll go away as soon as I am off this video, but I don't know. It's a psychological barrier. All right. Card number 2 is the mind and looks at how the querent might be experiencing her psychic abilities through her thoughts and emotions. Justice is a very rational, linear thinker. She's all about clarity, truth, and balance. I picture Justice as having an encyclopedic knowledge of the law. She would know all about statutes and precedents. To find an answer, she knows where to look. If the statute says that you need to get a permit before you put a swimming pool in your backyard, that's what you have to do. There's no room for interpretation. You either follow the law or you broke it. It's very similar with the Hierophant. If you have a question, you go to the Bible and you find an answer. And you know that it's the right answer and it's not up for debate. After all, who are you to argue with the Word of God? This is the exact opposite of learning to trust your intuition, because intuition is messy. Sometimes what you're thinking or feeling makes zero sense, and you have to learn to trust it. You have this thought that passes through your mind that you need to call your child because you don't feel like they're safe, but you know they're at school, although with mass school shootings that doesn't guarantee they're safe, and you talk yourself out of it because your thought makes no rational sense. Or, as I mentioned earlier, you walk into a room and suddenly you have a stomachache and need to throw up. It isn't logical. Even if you do feel that you've got psychic abilities and know exactly what's happening, it's still easy to talk yourself out of the reality of your experience and convince yourself that you ate rancid food for lunch. So I feel like the querent is struggling to explain her psychic abilities because she's trying to apply logic. I think this explains the pillars in all of the cards. The querent is realizing that there are two sides to her experiences. Exploring her psychic abilities is all about choosing between what she's been taught and what she suspects might be true for her. You've made it this far in the video, and I wanted to stop and ask a favor if you're not already a subscriber, and that is to please hit the subscribe button. It's free for you, and it will also help me grow this channel. Plus, it means that you won't miss anything. Thanks so much, and if you're already a subscriber, I truly appreciate your ongoing support. Now let's get back to the video. Card number 3 is the Soul and looks at how the querent might be experiencing her psychic abilities through her inner self or connection with spirit. The querent drew the Moon. I think this card confirms that the querent has psychic abilities because the Moon represents psychic abilities. This is because the Moon always has a dark side and tells us that things aren't always as they seem. It is associated with intuition, which helps you know things even if you can't see them. The Moon also represents fears, illusions, mysteries, things that are hidden, the unconscious, and psychic abilities. Once again, we see a card with two choices. Emerging from the water is a crayfish. The crayfish represents the primitive parts of our brain. He is emerging from the water, which represents our unconscious, onto land, which represents consciousness. There is a vertical path that divides the card in half and winds its way from the water, over the green grass, and into the pillars. Once again, the querent has a choice. On our left, we see a brown dog, which is tame and civilized. On the right, we see a yellow wolf, which is wild and uncivilized. The querent can choose which path she wants to follow. Does she want to trust her inner self and her psychic abilities, which is pretty scary? Or does she want to go back to the well-worn path, which is the dogma of the Hierophant and Justice? So let's summarize how we answered the question, am I psychic? And the answer is yes. We began by looking at the Hierophant reverse, which was the card at the bottom of the deck and designed to provide additional information. This card tells us that the querent is choosing to break away from the rules and traditions of formal religion and forge her own path. Card number 1 looks at how the querent might be experiencing her psychic abilities in her physical body. We determine that she doesn't understand what is happening in her body and she's feeling alone and unsupported. Card number 2 is the mind and looks at how the querent might be experiencing her psychic abilities through her thoughts and emotions. The querent drew justice, and we can see that she's struggling to explain her psychic abilities because they defy logic. Card number 3 is the soul and confirms that the querent has psychic abilities. She's being presented with 2 paths, trusting her inner self or going back to the rules and regulations of formal religion. I hope that this video gave you some ideas that you can apply to your tarot practice. Please leave a comment if you'd like to share what you've learned. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.